You begin not in the noise of catastrophe, not in the shadow of predators, but in the long, steady rhythm of life itself, the grazers. They are the pulse of the Mesozoic. They are the endless tide against which time itself seems to measure its beats. Imagine a clearing in a Jurassic Valley, the kind that might later be entombed in sandstone and rediscovered by our hands millions of years later. The ground is soft, a mosaic of ferns and horsetails glistening with dew. And from the forest edge, they emerge not in a rush, not with fanfare, but with a kind of patient inevitability. A herd of giants, slow-moving and immense, each step pressing an impression into the mud so deep that if conditions are right, the mark may one day harden into stone. Some of those stones have been found whole trackways etched across ancient floodplains. Rows of footprints stretching for hundreds of meters, side by side, the story of a journey written not in words, but in weight. And what do those footprints tell us? They whisper of company, of movement not in solitude, but in chorus. They tell us that these creatures, long-necked sauropods perhaps, or herds of plated stegosaurs, move together, feeling the press of bodies around them, the reassurance of safety. In paleontology, this is one of the clearest hints that social behavior, the very idea of a herd, stretches back far deeper into time than we sometimes imagine. Yet, there is still mystery. Researchers still question whether these trackways represent true migrations, like wildebeests crossing Africa today, or whether they are simply the patterns of creatures following rivers, seeking food where it is richest. The stones are silent, and we are left to wonder. The atmosphere of this world is heavy with life. The Triassic gave way to the Jurassic, and in that shift, the Earth warmed continents, pulled apart seas, opened, and plant life surged. The fern meadows you walk through tonight are not empty carpets, but living seas of green, pulsing with sunlight captured and held. Each frond is both ordinary and miraculous, a machine for turning light into nourishment, for feeding giants that in turn reshape the land. Listen closely. Beneath the drone of insects, you can almost hear it, the sound of teeth grinding plant matter. Not sharp tearing teeth, but batteries of flat ridges surfaces, designed for one purpose, only to break down leaves to turn stems into paste. This is the music of survival, repeated endlessly, never hurried, never quite stopping. And as you stand there breathing the humid air, you realize that the grazers are not merely animals within this landscape. They are the landscape. Their passage clears paths through forests. Their dung spreads seeds across valleys. Their constant chewing determines which plants flourish and which fade. They are both participants in and architects of their world. One of the lesser-known treasures of paleontology lies not in the bones, but in the stones that hold plants themselves. Fossilized ferns, cycads, and conifers, their shapes pressed into rock like delicate sketches. In some places, whole beds of petrified wood remain trees, frozen mid-growth, turned to stone by the passage of minerals. These fossil gardens tell us the diet of the giants, the menu of an age. And yet, even here questions remain. Were sauropods those cathedral-necked titans reaching high into the canopy to strip leaves no other creature could touch? Or did they, as some suggest, sweep their necks from side to side, harvesting low-lying plants in wide arcs? Researchers still debate. The bones allow multiple interpretations, and the world of the past slips between them like water through fingers. But tonight is not for argument. Tonight you simply stand in that meadow, watching the herd move. Notice the way the air shifts when they pass the slight ground tremor as a foot presses down the deep sigh of a tail swinging lazily. These are not predators, not hunters, but their very bulk carries authority. Few would dare challenge them. Look closer and you might notice something softer still. Smaller grazers, or nithopods, perhaps keep to the margins, watching the giants for cues. When the herd stirs, they stir. When the herd rests, they settle too. In this, the rhythms of life echo across species. Safety lies not in solitude, but in company. And so the first invitation is simply this step into the rhythm. Let the endless chewing, the soft grinding, become your heartbeat for tonight. Let the valley of ferns enfold you, the herd pass you by the footprints, sink into mud that may one day be stone. Because here, in the quiet heart of the Mesozoic time moves differently. It is not counted in hours or days, but in footsteps and seasons, in migrations and regrowth, in the rise and fall of ferns under the steady mouths of grazers. That is where we begin. A question asked, an invitation extended, and the first steps taken into a world where life does not rush, where survival is measured not in speed or sharpness, but in patience. The soft rhythms of prehistoric grazers. You follow the herd more closely now, not with hurried steps, but with that slow rhythm they seem to insist upon. It is as though the ground itself teaches you to move differently here. And soon you notice what they leave behind, the marks of passage pressed deep into the earth. A single footprint wide as a table pressed into soft mud. Another beside it overlapping slightly. And then another and another, until you realize you are standing not beside an accident of impressions, but on a road written in flesh and weight, a trackway stretching far beyond the horizon. These trackways are not inventions of imagination. They exist preserved in stone beds across the world in Texas, where long-necked sauropods and three-toed carnivores once walked together. In France, where parallel lines of stegosaurs marched across muddy flats. In Bolivia, where an entire cliffside holds thousands of impressions, like a page of calligraphy left by giants. And when paleontologists bend to study them, brushes in hand, they glimpse more than just size. They glimpse motion. Some tracks are shallow at the heel, deep at the toes, suggesting a hurried stride. Others show the faint drag of a tail tip, a reminder that not all creatures held their tails aloft. Occasionally, you find the small prints of young ones beside larger ones, as though a family passed here together, step matched to step. Researchers still question whether these great herds were truly bound to long migrations, like the antelope and wildebeest of today, or whether they circled within rich valleys, always close to water and greenery. Fossil evidence can be read either way. Some trackways stretch for miles, as if documenting a journey across a season. Others are clustered as if the herd lingered in one place, feeding until the land was bare. But there is no question that these marks matter. They are not bones locked away, but gestures across time, motions made visible. They remind us that dinosaurs were not only skeletons assembled in glass cases. They were beings who moved, who pressed weight into the earth, who followed each other step by step. Kneel down, if you will, and place your hand within one of these impressions. The stone is warm with the day's light, but cooler where shadow lingers. You notice the curvature, the subtle rise of what was once a claw ridge. Your palm cannot fill it. The sense of scale is overwhelming. And yet the odd thing is not only the size, but the regularity. These steps fall in patterns left, right, left, measured and constant, as though each creature was walking not only with its own intent, but with the pace of the herd itself. Imagine the sound it would have made dozens, perhaps hundreds of feet pressing down, lifting up, pressing down again. A thrum like drums, but slower, softer. A cadence of life that traveled across plains and resonated through valleys. It would not have been frightening. It would have been steady, like the sound of waves or the pulse of wind. A sound that could lull even you as it lulls us now. Fossils tell us more than movement. They tell us about conditions. For tracks to be preserved, the ground had to be just right, wet enough to hold shape, dry enough not to collapse. Then by chance, those tracks had to be buried quickly by sediment, sealed away from wind and rain. And only through further fortune, through uplift and erosion and discovery, do they meet us again. One of the lesser-known finds rests in South Korea. Hundreds of tracks from tiny plant eaters no longer than your arm. They darted between the giants, leaving prints barely the size of your hand. Their delicate steps remind us that grazers came in many sizes, and that herds were not always uniform fields of giants, but layered communities. It is humbling to think for every trackway discovered, how many thousands were erased. Rain-fell rivers, swelled surfaces, dried and cracked, and whole histories vanished without record. We walk on the earth daily, and it swallows our traces in ours. Only in the rarest conjunction of circumstance does anything remain. And yet here, in this imagined valley of stone, the herd walks forever. Step back and watch. As the sun tilts lower, the footprints gleam with reflected water, each one a small pool mirroring the sky. Birds of this age, primitive, feathered, cautious, flutter down to sip from them. You can see how life interlaces. The step of one creature creates the drink for another. And so the world folds in on itself with quiet reciprocity. This is why paleontologists speak not only of anatomy, but of behavior. Bones tell you a creature's shape. Tracks tell you its choices. Here in the angle of a footprint, you can glimpse hesitation. Here, in the overlapping of steps, you can glimpse a moment when the herd bunched close. Researchers still debate whether some trackways represent panic. Were these herds pursued by predators, spurred into sudden speed, or are we reading fear where there was none, simply overlaying our own restless anxieties onto creatures who knew only steady hunger and endless walking? The answer remains hidden in stone. The air cools now. Mist gathers in the hollows, clinging to the fern banks, lifting in the last gold of day. The herd continues its slow procession, unbothered, unhurried. You stand in silence, the marks of their passage all around you, each one a story, each one a testament. Perhaps the most profound truth of footprints is this. They are temporary by nature, and yet some have lasted longer than mountains. You too leave impressions on the ground when you walk, and within hours they are gone. Here in this quiet plain, the steps of creatures gone for 100 million years remain still legible to the eye, still soft to the imagination. And so you find yourself walking not only beside them, but in them. Your foot sliding into the hollow left by another, your stride matching theirs, separated by time but connected by the most ordinary of gestures, the act of walking forward. It is a reminder that deep time does not only live in bones and stones. It lives in rhythms, in patterns, in motions that repeat. Life walks, life grazes, life moves onward. And in the quiet hush of evening, with the herd fading into mist, you feel yourself moving with it, step by step. That is where this part leaves you among the trackways. Footprints glimmering with water, the echoes of steps pressing forward into silence. The path of footprints leads you downward now into a broad green hollow, where the land seems to cradle its own abundance. A valley opens wide and welcoming, and it is filled with plants so old, so familiar, yet strange that you pause to simply take them in. Here are no grasses. The grasses you know have not yet come. Instead, the ground is covered in ferns, fronds unfurling in coils, like the curled tips of violins catching beads of moisture that shine in the light. Horsetails rise taller than you, their stalks ridged and hollow, a forest in miniature swaying together. Cycads stand like sentinels, their stiff crowns of leaves arranged in perfect symmetry, almost architectural. And above them all, conifers tower their trunks, straight as cathedral columns bark, exuding a resin that perfumes the air with something sharp and sweet. You walk into this valley as though into another age of dreaming. The air is warm, humid, heavy with the scent of sap and soil. Mist clings low, drifting across the fern banks. Sunlight filters through needles and branches, scattering into shafts that paint the undergrowth gold. This is a Jurassic garden. From the shadows, the grazers emerge again. They do not come with haste, but with the same slow inevitability you felt before. Long-necked forms sway gently above the treetops' necks, arcing like drawn bows, their bodies half concealed by foliage. Others move lower, broad-bodied plaited tails, dragging faint grooves across the earth. Together they spread through the valley, each animal finding its place among the banquet of leaves. You can hear them. Not roaring, not calling, but breathing, chewing the sound of weight shifting through ferns. The rhythm is constant, unhurried. A soft tearing sound as fronds are stripped. The crunch of stems, the sigh of an exhale. If you close your eyes, is not unlike the sound of cattle in a meadow today, yet slower, deeper, more resonant. Fossil evidence tells us that such valleys existed across much of the Jurassic world. In North America, in China and Europe, plant-rich lowlands nurtured vast herds of sauropods and stegosaurs. The rocks preserve not only their bones, but their meals. Fossilized stomach contents, rare treasures have been found with fragments of conifers, cycads, and ferns, still intact, locked away for millions of years. In some, you can see the fibrous structure of leaves unchanged, as though the creature had only just swallowed them. And yet, there is mystery here too. Researchers still question how such immense bodies could sustain themselves on food that seems by modern standards low in nutrition. Were their stomachs vast fermentation chambers bubbling with microbial life that broke down cellulose into energy? Or did they feed almost constantly, moving from patch to patch in a ceaseless rhythm of intake? Both answers are possible. Neither is certain. Look more closely at the plants around you. A fern bends under the sweep of a tail, releasing spores into the air. Tiny motes that drift upward in the sunlight. A cycad cracks open its cone, scattering seeds into the soil, ready to begin again. Life here is not ornamental. Every frond is a strategy, every leaf a survival. Notice how the valley shapes the herd. The sauropods stretch upward, reaching conifer branches no other creature can touch. The stegosaurs stay low, stripping ferns close to the ground. Ankylosaurs move slowly at the margins, their armored backs almost indistinguishable from the rocky slopes, nibbling cycads with quiet patience. Each finds a niche, each plays a part. Together they weave an economy of leaves and hunger, a system both delicate and enduring. Among them, smaller creatures dart. Ornithopods, no larger than deer, pause to snip at horsetails before vanishing into cover. Primitive mammals, no bigger than mice, scurry in the underbrush, feasting on seeds and insects. To them, the grazers are living mountains, ever present, ever moving, shaping the very ground with their passage. The valley air grows thick with sound. Not noise, but a kind of low, steady murmur. The chewing of many mouths, the occasional crack of a branch, the shuffling of feet. It is a chorus without conductor, a music without beginning or end. And you realize this is what stability feels like in deep time. Not the sudden drama of a predator's strike, not the violence of eruption or impact, but the slow, patient constancy of eating, of growing, of moving on. These rhythms endured for tens of millions of years. Long before the first flowers, long before mammals took shape in the shadows, long before you. One lesser-known fossil site in Argentina preserves entire meadows of petrified plants. The ferns and cycads lie still in the rock, their details so precise, you can see the veins in leaves. Imagine walking there today, running your hand across stone fronds, and knowing that once in valleys like this, they fed giants. Researchers still debate whether these ecosystems were resilient or fragile. Could herds strip a valley bare within weeks, forcing endless movement? Or did the plants regenerate fast enough to sustain them? The truth may be both cycles of abundance and scarcity, growth and departure written into the landscape itself. Now stand at the valley's edge and look outward. The herd moves slowly through the greenery, not in panic, not in haste, but in rhythm. Necks sweep, tails sway, footsteps thud. Ferns bend, recover bend again. The valley breathes with them, and as the sun dips lower, you notice the light shift. Golden rays touch the tops of saccades. The conifers catch fire with brilliance. The ferns glow with an inner light. The valley becomes a cathedral of green and gold, roofed by sky, carpeted by ancient plants, inhabited by creatures whose very being is to feed, to move, to endure. You feel perhaps that you are intruding, and yet the grazers take no notice. To them you are as irrelevant as the mist or the bird. And in that irrelevance lies comfort. You are free to watch, free to listen, free to breathe in the ancient air and feel the slow heart of the world beneath your feet. This is the Valley of Ferns. A world within a world where time is measured not in minutes or hours, but in seasons of growth, in cycles of feeding, in the endless rhythm of grazers moving across the green. And as night begins to fall and the herd settles among the plants, you too settle into the rhythm, letting the valley's hush fold over you. The valley is hushed now, though not silent. The kind of quiet you hear in a meadow at dusk, when the day still lingers, but the air is softening toward night. The herd has slowed, finding its places among the ferns, and from where you stand, the most constant sound is not footsteps, not tails, but chewing. It is a strange thing to notice the sound of mouths at work. Yet here it becomes a kind of music so steady, so all-encompassing, that it wraps around you like the hum of cicadas or the breaking of waves. Listen closely. A frond torn from its stem makes a faint snap, followed by the grinding rhythm of teeth. Another mouth joins in, then another, until the entire herd seems to be part of one patient, endless cadence. Tear, chew, grind, swallow. Pause, begin again. It is not hurried. It is not careless. It is life distilled to its most basic rhythm: intake, transformation, sustenance. The teeth of these creatures tell their own stories. Fossils reveal hadrosaurs with entire batteries of grinding teeth, hundreds arranged in columns designed to break down tough plant matter. Stegosaurs with leaf-shaped teeth, simple yet effective, clipping vegetation with a gardener's precision. Sauropods, surprisingly, with only simple peg-like teeth, not for grinding, but for stripping leaves in great sweeps, leaving the work of digestion to their vast stomachs. Researchers still question how these different strategies coexisted. Did each group specialize, avoiding competition by targeting different plants? Or did their ranges overlap freely? The sheer abundance of greenery enough for all. The fossil record suggests both might be true separation, where needed overlap, where possible. But tonight, you don't see divisions. You see mouths working side by side. You hear the unison of chewing. And in that sound, strangely, there is comfort. Imagine yourself among them. The air is humid, filled with the smell of resin, damp earth, and crushed greenery. You are surrounded by bodies vast and armored, long-necked, and plated, each lost in the rhythm of its meal. They do not glance at you. They do not mark your presence. Their attention is fixed on the eternal work of eating. A lesser-known discovery in Montana revealed stomach contents of a hadrosaur so well preserved that entire plant fragments remain down to pollen grains trapped within. Ferns, conifers, flowering plants just beginning their spread, all captured in a single meal. To hold that fossil is to hold a moment of chewing paused in stone. You think of that now as you listen. Each grind of teeth is not simply sound, but the shaping of the land itself. For what goes in must come out. And in their droppings, seeds are carried, nutrients, spread, landscapes reshaped. The rhythm of chewing is also the rhythm of renewal. Close your eyes. Let the sound roll over you. Tear, chew, grind, swallow. Tear, chew, grind, swallow. Like a drum beat muffled by distance, like rain on leaves, like your own heartbeat if it could slow to match the pulse of giants. You realize that this sound has filled valleys for tens of millions of years. Entire epochs passed beneath it. Continents drifted, climates shifted, volcanoes erupted, and still. Somewhere a mouth tore into leaves, a jaw ground a plant into pulp, and a body was sustained. The world's history is not only written in cataclysms, it is written in chewing, in eating, in the steady patience of survival. Among the herd, there are moments of variation. A sauropod raises its head, a strand of leaves dangling from its mouth, and for a moment the chewing pauses before resuming. A stegosaurus shuffles to the side, snapping a branch underfoot, and the rhythm breaks like a syncopated beat before settling again. Small ornithopods nibble quickly, their chewing more rapid, like whispers within the greater murmur, but always the pattern returns. Chewing is their prayer, their constancy. Researchers still debate the efficiency of these grazers. Did their slow chewing limit how much they could process, or did sheer numbers and constant feeding make up for it? The bones suggest stamina rather than speed, digestive systems, built not for haste, but for endurance. In a way, the very slowness of the chewing might have been their secret. What seems lethargic to us was balance to them. A quiet fact, some fossilized dung coprolites, as they are called, preserve not just plant fragments, but microscopic traces of fungi and bacteria. Evidence that even in digestion, these giants carried entire worlds within them. Unseen rhythms working alongside their own. Now the valley dims. Night insects rise, adding their own song to the chewing. Fireflies, or their prehistoric kin, glow faintly among the ferns. Above, the first stars prick the sky. Yet the herd continues unbothered by nightfall. Their mouths work on steady, timeless. You feel the weight of it. Not the heaviness of burden, but the heaviness of assurance. Here is life at its most enduring. Here is the sound that fed worlds. The rhythm slows your own breath. You inhale with the tearing, exhale with the grinding, find yourself carried in the same current. And in that alignment, you feel what it must have been like to live in this world, not as a predator, not as an intruder, but as part of the pulse. You lie back now among the ferns, the earth soft beneath you, the stars above dim through mist. Around you, massive silhouettes bend and rise, tails, swaying mouths working. The rhythm of chewing is all-encompassing, steady, eternal. It is not only their rhythm, it becomes yours. Twilight gathers at the valley's edge. The last light of the sun stretches low, painting the horizon in amber and violet. Against that fading glow, you see them shapes vast enough to rival the sky itself. Sauropods, long-necked titans, moving with a patience that makes mountains seem restless. They do not hurry. They never do. Their steps are deliberate, each footfall, a slow, ponderous press into the soil. Their necks rise like bridges, like drawn arcs of earth itself, swaying gently as they reach for branches high above. From where you stand, the shadows of these creatures stretch across the floodplain, silhouettes, elongated tails dragging into the growing dark. You feel small, impossibly so. And yet there's no threat in their size, only awe. Fossils tell us sauropods reached lengths of over 30 meters, their necks alone longer than city buses. Argentinosaurus, Brachiosaurus, Diplodocus, names given by us, but their reality is beyond measure. Imagine the strain of carrying such weight. Their bones, lightened by air sacs, resemble the architecture of cathedrals, ribbed and hollow, strong, yet delicate. Researchers still question how their hearts managed to pump blood up those soaring necks. Did they hold their heads high, like living towers? Or did they sweep them side to side, keeping blood flow steady? The fossils cannot answer definitively. We imagine both possibilities, and tonight, in this valley, you see both, some necks craned skyward, others arcing low across ferns. The sound of chewing you heard earlier deepens now, accompanied by the tearing of branches. Conifer limbs crack, sending showers of needles down like rain. A neck swings, jaws close, and a crown of greenery disappears into the cavern of a mouth. The chewing resumes slow, thunderous echoing in the hollow of twilight. This is not chaos. It is rhythm on a monumental scale. Each sauropod consumes as much in a day as an elephant might in a week. To sustain themselves, they must keep moving, must graze across vast landscapes. The herd is not simply present. It is in transit always, an endless loop of hunger and fulfillment. And yet, there is gentleness in their shadows. Watch closely as a juvenile follows its mother's flank, smaller, but still towering, every movement a mirror. It nudges at ferns, imitating the way her mouth gathers leaves, though its bite is clumsy. In this quiet moment, you see what the footprints hinted at: earlier company family survival through togetherness. The earth beneath them is marked by their passing. Fossilized trackways of sauropods have been found in Portugal, stretching across ancient tidal flats. Some show parallel paths, as though multiple giants walked shoulder to shoulder, their shadows overlapping in the fading light of another age. These trackways are not just evidence of size, but of society. Researchers still debate whether sauropods lived in tightly knit herds or looser congregations, gathering at rivers and dispersing across plains. Evidence suggests both flexibility, adaptation, survival strategies shaped by season and landscape. Tonight, in this imagined valley, they move as one, shadows flowing together like tides. You feel the vibration before you hear it. A low resonance, not a roar, but a deep exhale. A sound that seems to rise from the ground itself. One sauropod breathes, and the valley responds. Mist stirs ferns, bent birds flutter upward in startlement. Yet all remains calm. This is not a predator's cry. This is the voice of size itself, a reminder that you are standing among mountains of flesh. The shadows lengthen further as the sun dips below the horizon. The sauropods do not stop. Their silhouettes blur with the gathering night, yet still you can sense their presence. The sway of a neck, the sweep of a tail, the occasional snap of a tree yielding its crown. In the fossil record, sauropods dominate entire formations. Their bones lie scattered by rivers, preserved in floodplains, encased in stone. In some beds, dozens are found together, their remains mingled, suggesting not isolated giants, but communities. Imagine the weight of such a gathering, the shadows it would cast across the land. One lesser-known site in Tanzania holds evidence of juveniles moving separately from adults' nursery herds, perhaps where the young could grow safely among peers. Picture them now, smaller shadows darting at the edges of the herd, learning surviving always within reach of protection. The night deepens, stars emerging one by one, sharp against the black. The valley glows faintly with mist, silver, and moonlight. And still the sauropods move their shadows, blending into one another, a slow procession of giants across a dreamlike plain. You lie in the ferns and let them pass you by the earth, trembling faintly with each step. They are not in a rush, and neither are you. The shadows of sauropods are timeless. They moved like this for over 100 million years, long before the first flower opened, long before mammals rose from obscurity. Their shadows stretched across Earth's story as constants as rhythms, deeper than any clock. Researchers still question what drove them forward: seasonal droughts, the need for fresh leaves, instinctive cycles across continents. The answer may never be complete. But perhaps it is enough to know that they walked, that their shadows crossed valleys, that their chewing filled nights, and that in their passing, the land itself was shaped. You close your eyes now, letting the rhythm of their steps merge with the rhythm of your breath. The shadows of sauropods sweep across you, immense, yet soft, vast, yet calming, and you drift with them. The shadows of sauropods fade into the night, but their rhythm lingers in you. When morning comes, again pale and silver, you find yourself still among them. Now, though your attention is drawn not to the single silhouette of a neck against the horizon, nor to the weight of one body pressing the earth, but to the pattern formed when many move together, a herd. It is easy to imagine these creatures as solitary giants wandering alone across ancient plains. But the evidence in stone tells another story. Parallel trackways, rows of prints side by side. Bone beds with dozens of skeletons mingled, suggesting shared catastrophe. The very presence of juveniles among adults, their small steps pressed into mud beside larger ones. These are not accidents. These are signatures of community, safety in numbers. The principle is older than the dinosaurs themselves. Fish schooling in oceans, mammals gathering on savannas, birds flocking across skies. And here in the Jurassic and Cretaceous, the grazers move together in the same instinctive choreography. Stand among them and feel the flow. It is not ordered like a human parade, but nor is it chaos. It is rhythm, a shifting coherence, as bodies adjust and readjust, each finding its place within the larger whole. A sauropod sways left, and another yields space. A stegosaur pauses head low to strip ferns, and the smaller ornithopods thread carefully past, quick as shadows. Each motion is small, but together they create movement without collision, a tide of life rolling across the land. Researchers still question how these herds communicated. Was it through sound, low rumbles too deep for human ears, traveling miles through the ground itself? Was it through sight, the sway of a tail, the posture of a neck, a visual code understood instinctively? Or was it chemical, the shared scent of fear or calm drifting among them? The debate continues unanswered, but as you walk with them now, you do not need certainty. You only need to feel the way one responds to another, the way the herd bends as a single body when terrain shifts, the way they pause and resume in unison. The instinct is not only for safety, it is also for direction. Imagine crossing an open floodplain where the horizon blurs with haze, where food lies hidden beyond ridges you cannot see. A solitary animal may wander endlessly, but a herd through numbers remembers. Generations pass, and the path is held encoded not in maps or language, but in the collective instinct of steps. Fossils reveal this: two recurring trackways across the same ancient valleys, layers upon layers of prints retraced by countless herds. This is migration, not of calculation, but of memory. The herd itself is the map. Watch the young now. A juvenile hadrosaur stumbles in the soft earth, its small three-toed feet sliding in mud. For a moment it lags behind its calls, thin and uncertain. Immediately the herd shifts. Adult slow heads turn tails, pause mid-sway. The rhythm adjusts to the smallest member. Soon the juvenile finds its stride again, slipping back into place. This too is instinct, to leave no one behind. In Alberta, a bone bed of thousands of Centrosaurus skeletons has been uncovered, an entire herd, likely swept away by flood or storm. Though tragedy preserved them, the sheer number speaks to how vast these groups once were. Imagine standing in such a gathering, thousands of horns, thousands of footsteps, thousands of breaths. A tide of life moving as one. Among the herd there is calm, but also alertness. Not all threats come from hunger or drought. Predators move at the edges, formidable hunters who depend on the slow or the weak. And so the herd instinct is vigilance. One stegosaur lifts its head, suddenly plates catching the morning light. Others notice pausing mid-chew. The ripple spreads silent but immediate. You sense the tension, the readiness to move. Yet no predator reveals itself this time, and slowly chewing resumes. Researchers still question whether some species posted sentinels individuals who stood watch while others fed. Trackways sometimes show isolated prints circling while herds rested, hinting at such behavior. If true, it suggests a level of cooperation we can scarcely imagine, giants not only eating together, but guarding each other in silent shifts. The herd instinct shapes more than behavior. It shapes the land. Entire forests bend to their passage. Valleys open stripped clean by feeding. Rivers are muddied by thousands of feet pressing down together. Even the soil is altered by their droppings spreading nutrients across the plain. The herd is not only part of the ecosystem, it is one of its architects. A lesser-known site in India preserves layers of fossilized dung spread across kilometers, evidence of repeated gatherings. Within those coprolites are plant fragments, pollen grains, even bits of charcoal from ancient fires. They tell us that where herds moved, ecosystems shifted, seeds scattered, landscapes renewed. The instinct of the herd was not just to survive, but to transform. You walk now among the edges, feeling the draft of their movement, hearing the low rumble of breath. It is a lullaby of giants, a rhythm of steps, the reassurance of company. Alone, the night might feel vast, threatening. But within the herd, you are enfolded. The world feels smaller, steadier. The instinct that binds them begins to bind you too. There's no need to decide direction. No need to watch the sky anxiously. The herd carries you forward, its memory older than yours, its safety broader than any wall. This is the secret of the herd instinct. It is not only survival, but belonging. As dawn brightens, mist lifting from the valley floor, you see them stretch across the plain in their hundreds. Their shadows blur together, indistinguishable like the pattern of waves on a distant sea. You can no longer count them. They are not individuals, but a single tide of life ebbing and flowing across the land. And within that tide, you feel your own steps grow lighter. Your breath slows. The rhythm of chewing resumes, around you steady and constant. The herd instinct is no longer theirs alone. It is yours too. The herd drifts onward, filling the valley with its quiet procession. Yet at the edges, where the ferns grow thick and the shadows deepen, you notice another rhythm, slower, heavier, marked by the weight of bodies clothed not only in flesh, but in armor. They move differently than the sauropods or hadrosaurs. Their steps are deliberate, as though each footfall is considered, each motion balanced beneath the load they carry. Plates rise from their backs, rows of bone hardened into defense. Tails bristle with clubs or spikes swinging gently like pendulums. These are the armored grazers, stegosaurs and the Jurassic ankylosaurs and the Cretaceous quiet architects of survival. They are not swift. They are not towering. Yet their silence carries a weight as profound as the thunder of the giants. Step closer, and you can hear them among the ferns. The tearing of fronds, the crunch of cycades, the slow grinding of teeth built not for speed, but for persistence. Their mouths are narrow, their bites selective as though each plant is chosen carefully. Fossil jaws confirm this stegosaur teeth simple and leaf-shaped, clipping low vegetation. Ankylosaur teeth stubby and ridged, grinding plants close to the ground. Researchers still question whether these armored grazers fed alone or within mixed herds. Some trackways suggest independence. Solitary paths winding through forest margins. Others show groups' prints overlapping, as if the weight of many armored backs press the same ground. The truth may be fluid, changing with season and circumstance. Yet here tonight you see them moving with the herd, not central, but peripheral. Their armor forming a quiet wall at the margins. A subtle boundary protection without aggression. The silence of their armor is deceptive. Each plate, each spike is alive. In stegosaurs, the tall plates rising from their spines were threaded with blood vessels, glowing perhaps with heat or color. Some paleontologists propose they were used for display signaling health or dominance. Others suggest they acted as radiators shedding warmth into the air. Researchers still debate. In ankylosaurs, the armor is different. Interlocking osteoderms like a living mosaic of stone, each bone fused into the skin itself. Their tails ended in massive clubs, dense enough to shatter bone. Though whether they used them against predators or rivals remains uncertain. Fossils of tyrannosaurs with damaged shins hint at the force these weapons could unleash. Yet even so, the ankylosaurs move with calm, their tails swinging slowly, their armor gleaming in the fading light. Watch how the herd reacts around them. Smaller grazers keep a respectful distance, weaving between their shadows, but never brushing against their sides. Even the sauropods step carefully when these armored forms pass by, as if aware of the hidden strength within their silence. And in this you see a balanced speed and size at the center armor and patience at the edges. Each has its place. Each contributes to the greater whole. A lesser-known fossil discovery in Mongolia revealed an ankylosaur preserved in exquisite detail. Its armor intact, even the keratin sheaths over its osteoderms visible. Its body lies curled as though asleep, the silence of armor turned to stone. To look upon it is to glimpse a creature that appears almost alive, frozen, not in motion, but in rest. Night deepens, and the armored grazers become indistinct in the mist. Their plates rise like jagged silhouettes, their tails sway like slow pendulums in the gloom. They do not rush. They do not falter. They graze steadily, their armor glistening faintly with dew. The silence around them is not empty, but protective. Within it, you feel a kind of reassurance. In a world of predators, of sudden strikes and hidden dangers, here are creatures that carry their safety upon their backs. They need not boast, need not roar. Their presence alone is enough. Researchers still question whether the plates and armor were more for defense or for communication. Did stegosaurs flare their plates and display warning rivals or courting mates? Did ankylosaurs use their armor as signals as much as shields? The fossils allow both readings. What is certain is that these structures were not accidental. They were chosen by time, honed across millions of years, shaped into silence and strength. As you watch a stegosaur lowers its head to drink from a shallow pool, the plates on its back catch the starlight, reflecting faintly like lanterns in the dark. Another steps beside it, and their reflections merge, twin silhouettes rippling across the water. No fight, no challenge, just quiet companionship at the margin of the herd. You realize that their silence is not absence, but presence. It is a statement of endurance. These armored grazers survived for tens of millions of years across shifting continents and climates, holding to their slow rhythm while predators rose and fell around them. They did not need to dominate. They only needed to persist. And so they did. Lie down now among the ferns near where they graze. Listen to the crunch of fronds, the slow exhale of armored lungs. The plates rise above you like a wall. The tails sway gently like pendulums, marking the hours of deep time. You are safe here, wrapped in their silence, enfolded by their steady presence. The night carries on. The herd breathes. The armored ones stand watch. And in their silence, you find rest. Morning comes with mist rising from wetlands, the air heavy with moisture reeds, bending in the lightest breeze. The herd has shifted its course, moving from forest margins to open floodplains, where water mirrors the sky. And here at the water's edge, you hear something new, no longer only the rhythm of chewing, but the low, resonant music of voices. Hadrosaurs, duck-billed grazers, their skulls shaped into resonating chambers, crests arching and curling like instruments built not of wood and string, but of bone and air. You stand at the fringe of the wetland as a group gathers their bodies, broad, their tails stiff, their bills dipping into horsetails and aquatic plants. Between mouthfuls, they lift their heads and call. The sound is unlike anything alive today. Not a roar, not a bellow, but a soft, carrying hum, deep as wind in a cavern, sometimes rising into a mournful cry that echoes across the water. One calls, another answers, then a third, until the wetland fills with overlapping tones. It is unmistakably a song. The fossils tell us this too. Skulls of Parasaurolophus with their long backward crests reveal hollow tubes threading through bone. Reconstruction suggests that when air passed through the skull itself, became an instrument producing tones of surprising complexity. Other hadrosaurs, Corythosaurus, Lambeosaurus, Hypacrosaurus, had differently shaped crests, each tuned to its own frequency. Researchers still question whether these songs were for communication within herds for mating displays, or even for species recognition, ensuring that individuals did not lose themselves in the press of thousands. Some propose that calls could have been infrasound vibrations, too deep for us to hear, felt instead as tremors in the chest. But whatever their purpose tonight, in this prehistoric wetland, they are unmistakably communal. The herd sings together, and their voices roll across the valley like waves of sound. You close your eyes, and the calls become almost oceanic. Deep, resonant pulses layered and rhythmic. It is not difficult to imagine that entire floodplains once echoed with this music dusk. And dawn, marked not only by the rising sun or cooling air, but by the collective song of grazers calling to one another. A lesser-known fossil discovery revealed hadrosaur inner ears with structures suited to detecting low-frequency sounds. They were attuned to the resonance of their own voices, built not only to sing, but to listen. Imagine standing in such a herd, your body humming faintly as tones ripple through you, a music of belonging carried not only by air, but by earth. The hadrosaurs themselves bobbed with calm efficiency. Their duckbills raked through reeds and aquatic plants, stripping them in great sweeps. Fossil evidence shows grooves along their jaws, as though the bills were shearing blades. Behind them, batteries of hundreds of teeth grind, replacing themselves throughout life, ensuring that the chewing never ceased. Researchers still debate whether these herds moved in seasonal migrations, their songs guiding them across landscapes, or whether they remained closer to fertile wetlands, voices weaving the edges of water and land together. What is clear is that their gatherings were immense. Bone beds in Canada preserve thousands of hadrosaurs. Their remains mingled evidence of vast herds that must have filled valleys with their presence. Now in this imagined moment, you hear not bones but living sound. Watch the young among them. Smaller forms trail the larger ones. Their crests undeveloped, their calls higher, less resonant. Yet they call nonetheless, answering mothers and siblings, learning the rhythm of song. A juvenile slips into shallow water, splashing clumsily, and lets out a wavering hum. Immediately, two adults respond, stepping closer, their deeper tones steadying the little one's voice. This is communication, protection, reassurance. It is the herd instinct now carried on sound. The wetland glows with morning light, water shimmering gold mist, lifting in translucent sheets. And through it all, the hadrosaurs feed and sing. Their songs do not rise into frenzy, do not demand attention. They are background steady, woven into the rhythm of chewing, the splash of steps, the rustle of reeds. Imagine lying on the bank, half submerged in reeds, listening. The calls rise and fall, overlapping, merging. Some short, some long, some low enough to feel in your bones. It is lullaby and chorus together, the song of a community that measured its existence not in moments of violence, but in endless cycles of feeding and belonging. A lesser-known trackway in Alaska preserves hadrosaurs far to the north within ancient polar forests. Imagine their songs beneath auroras, voices echoing through months of twilight. Did their calls carry across snow-dusted valleys, keeping herds together in the long night? Researchers still question how these animals survived such extremes. But the trackways prove they did. Perhaps their songs were not only communication, but comfort. Here in the wetland before you, they are comfort now. The hadrosaurs lower their heads once more, chewing, resuming in steady rhythm. Yet every few moments, a voice lifts, resonant and deep answered by another, until the valley's silence is filled again with tones older than music itself. This is the sound of belonging. This is the song of the herd. And as the sun rises higher, the songs fade into background, still present but softer woven now, with chewing and splashing the daily rhythm of grazers continuing unbroken. The songs of the hadrosaurs linger in your ears as the scene fades. Slowly the wetland dissolves into mist, and when it clears again, you find yourself standing somewhere wholly different. The air is sharper here, colder. The light is strange, not the golden glow of valleys or the violet hush of twilight, but a softer illumination stretched long across the horizon. This is the far south, deep in the Cretaceous polar world. Here forests grow under suns that linger for months, and darkness falls not nightly, but in seasons. Yet even here at the ends of the earth, herds of grazers endured. Look around. The trees are not tropical ferns or towering cycads, but polar conifers, their needles clustered tight, adapted for chill. Ginkgos spread broad leaves that tremble in the thin air. The undergrowth is sparse compared to equatorial jungles, but still green enough to sustain life. And in the midst of this subdued abundance, you see them herds moving through the half-light. Hadrosaurs. Again, their bodies hunched against the cold, their bills pulling at low shrubs dusted with frost. Smaller ornithopods dart between their legs, quick-footed, their breath faint in the cool air. Their shadows stretch long across the snow-speckled ground, endless as the twilight itself. Fossil trackways in Alaska and Australia prove their presence here. Whole herds of herbivorous dinosaurs once trod these polar forests, their prints pressed into soils that froze and thawed with the seasons. Bones of Edmontosaurus and Lielenosaura tell of creatures adapted to extremes, large eyes for dim light, sturdy bodies for endurance. Researchers still question how they survived the long winters. Did they migrate vast distances, following the sun to warmer lands, or did they endure the cold, feeding on evergreen needles and bark? Some evidence suggests the latter. Growth rings in fossil bones reveal seasonal slowing, as though metabolism itself adjusted to endure scarcity. These grazers were not simply wanderers, they were survivors. Stand among them now and notice the quiet. No loud songs echo here, only muted calls, soft communication carried in still air. Snow falls lightly, dusting the conifer branches, settling on the broad backs of hadrosaurs. They shake it off with slow motions, tails swinging, and continue to graze. A lesser-known fossil discovery in Victoria, Australia, uncovered small ornithopods with unusually large optic nerves, suggesting vision adapted to months of twilight. Picture them now, slipping between shadows, their large eyes reflecting what little light remains. They nibble at low ferns that persist even in frost, each bite a quiet defiance of winter. You walk with the herd, your breath joining theirs, clouds drifting together into the cold air. The crunch of snow beneath their feet mingles with the grinding of teeth. A new rhythm, sharper, clearer. It is the same music of survival, but tuned now to harsher keys. Researchers still debate whether young were born in spring-timed to seasons of abundance, or whether clutches of eggs were risked in the dark of winter. Fossilized nests hint at both. Imagine hatchlings emerging in thin light, pressing close to adults for warmth, learning to graze on sparse undergrowth while frost still lay on the ground. The polar world feels at once harsh and tranquil. There are no roaring volcanoes, no crashing waves. Only endless twilight, the sun a pale glow that never quite rises, never quite sets. Time feels slower here stretched, and the herd with its steady chewing and quiet movement matches that slowness perfectly. You pause to rest beside a fallen log bark, stripped clean by countless mouths. The wood is scarred with bite marks, shallow grooves that fossilize easily. Paleontologists have found such marks, evidence that bark itself was part of winter diets. Imagine the taste: resinous, tough, bitter. Yet to a grazer in lean times, it was life. Above you, the sky shifts. Auroras ripple faintly green, and violet curtains sweeping across the dim horizon. The herd does not pause. They have seen such lights countless times. To them, it is background, just as the long night itself is background, endured with patience. In the stillness, you realize something profound. Life adapts. Even in the cold, even in half-light, even at the world's edge, the soft rhythms of grazing persist. The polar pastures stretch onward. You watch as the herd moves into the distance, their silhouettes fading into mist. Their chewing carried softly on the cold air. They do not fear the darkness. They live within it. And as they vanish, you feel yourself linger, warmed not by sun, but by the steady truth of endurance. The grazers have taught you this: survival is not always loud or violent. Sometimes it is simply persistence, step by step, bite by bite, season after season, even under endless twilight skies. The twilight of the polar pastures fades. You lift your gaze and slowly, the world around you brightens again. Warmer now, more abundant, a forest rising around you. Like the vaulted ceiling of an ancient cathedral, the trunks are immense. Conifers climb straight into the sky, their bark ridged and resinous, each tree as wide as a house. Cycads cluster below, broad-leaved and symmetrical, their stiff crowns catching beams of light that filter down in narrow shafts. Ferns and horsetails carpet the ground, but your eyes are drawn upward to the canopy itself. There, above the reach of most creatures, leaves glimmer in sunlight. They seem safe, untouchable, until a shadow moves, and a neck rises, impossibly long, sweeping through the branches. The sauropods have returned. Watch them now, in their element. Their necks sway slowly, arcs of living architecture reaching into heights no other grazer can touch. A mouth opens, teeth simple and peg-like, stripping a branch of needles with a single sweep. The branch trembles, then snaps, showering fragments to the forest floor, where smaller creatures wait to seize what falls. It is a system of sharing, though, not by intention. The giants feed from the canopy, and in their passing, they feed those below. Fossil sites confirm this: the presence of multiple herbivore species in the same layers, their diets revealed by tooth wear and coprolites. Researchers still question whether this division of resources was deliberate or accidental. But either way, the result is clear: life stratified by height, each layer sustained by the one above. Step into the forest with them. The air here is different, damp, filled with the sharp tang of resin and the musky odor of leaf litter. Sunlight dapples the undergrowth, falling in broken patterns through swaying branches. Every so often, a great crack echoes as a sauropod pulls an entire limb down, stripping it bare before moving on. Their shadows stretch across the ground tails, swaying footsteps muffled by deep beds of needles. You feel the earth shift as they pass each step, pressing you deeper into the living forest. A lesser-known discovery from Utah revealed fossilized stomach contents of a Brachiosaurus filled with conifer needles and seeds. The fragments were so well preserved that paleobotanists could identify the species of tree. Imagine that moment, to hold in your hand the very meal of a giant, the remains of a tree branch stripped and swallowed more than 150 million years ago. Researchers still debate whether sauropods fed primarily at great heights as giraffes do today, or whether they swept their necks low, grazing vast swaths of ferns in great arcs. Their skeletons allow both possibilities, and perhaps they did both adjusting as seasons demanded. Tonight in this forest, you see them do each next rising, then dipping, always in rhythm, always in motion. Look closely, and you notice smaller grazers waiting below. Ornithopods nibble fallen fragments. Tiny mammals scurry to seize seeds loosened by the giants. Even armored stegosaurs wander beneath the canopy, feeding on what rains down from above. The forest canopy feeds not only the tallest, but everything below its bounty, cascading downward in endless cycles. And yet, there is silence in the canopy too. The sauropods are not loud. They breathe, they chew, they move. But their presence is so constant that it becomes background. You walk among them and feel as though you are in the nave of a cathedral, pillars stretching skyward, voices hushed. Imagine lying on your back, looking upward as a neck arcs across the branches. Its shadow darkens the patch of sky above you, leaves torn free, drifting down like slow green snow. A tail sweeps across the distance, dislodging needles that spiral through shafts of light. The forest canopy is alive with motion, yet the rhythm is unhurried, endless. One of the lesser-known marvels of sauropod anatomy lies not in their size, but in their lungs. Air sacs extended into their bones, lightening their frames and allowing breath to flow continuously, much as it does in birds. This adaptation may have fueled their enormous size, their ability to keep necks aloft for hours as they fed among the treetops. Researchers still question how these systems evolved, but the fossils show delicate traces of pneumatized bone, a record of breath written into stone. To think of this now is to realize, even in silence, each giant carried a cathedral of air within its lungs, echoing softly as it fed among the trees. The canopy itself is ancient. Some conifers here belong to lineages that persist even now. Araucarias, towering evergreens, still found in South America, their spiny leaves nearly unchanged from Jurassic times. To touch their bark today is to touch the memory of forests where sauropods once grazed. And as you walk among them tonight, you realize how little time has passed in the life of trees. To them, millions of years are but seasons. To the sauropods, each branch is sustenance. To you, it is both. The forest dims as evening gathers. Golden light filters through high branches, turning needles into threads of fire. The sauropods continue unbothered by dusk, their long silhouettes still reaching, still chewing, still reshaping the canopy with every bite. And you remain below, listening to the quiet rain of leaves, watching the eternal dance of giants among trees. The canopy breathes with them. The forest belongs to them. And yet for this moment it belongs to you too. From the forest canopy, the sound of branches snapping fades. Slowly the scene opens outward. You step beyond the shelter of conifers and cycads, and there before you stretches a river wide and gleaming, winding like a silver ribbon through the valley. Its surface mirrors the sky, broken only by the slow drift of logs and the ripple of creatures rising to breathe. The herd is already there. They move toward the water in long files, their steps sinking into soft banks. Sauropods wade shoulder-deep, their tails floating lightly, their long necks still arcing above the current as they reach for leaves along the opposite bank. Smaller hadrosaurs shuffle to the edges, lowering their bills into reeds, stripping stalks with careful sweeps. Stegosaurs linger at shallows, their plates catching sunlight, their tails swaying gently as they drink. The river is more than water. It is a path. Fossil evidence tells us that rivers structured the lives of grazers. Trackways follow ancient floodplains. Bones cluster along former channels. Nests appear on elevated banks. The pattern is clear. Rivers guided herds, offering food, drink, and direction. In times of drought, their flow became lifelines. In times of plenty, they became highways across landscapes. Researchers still question whether some herds migrated following rivers seasonally, or whether they remained within river valleys year-round. The evidence suggests both. Some trackways stretch in single directions as though documenting journeys of weeks. Others circle within floodplains, footprints layered upon footprints suggesting continuity. But whichever path they chose, rivers were always central. Step closer now. The air is cooler here, brushed with the scent of water and wet soil. Insects rise in clouds, dragonflies skimming the surface with iridescent wings. A primitive turtle surfaces, eyes blinking before sinking back into the current. Above, pterosaurs wheel lazily, their wings catching sunlight as they glide between river bends. The grazers do not mind them. They are absorbed in the rhythm of drinking, chewing, wading. You can hear the soft splash of feet, the gentle sucking as bills pull reeds from the mud, the low exhale of sauropods as they blow mist from their nostrils. A lesser-known fossil site in Morocco preserves impressions of plants and animals swept together in ancient river sediments. Among them are fragments of hadrosaur jaws, water-worn and broken, carried downstream until they settled in quiet eddies. These remains remind us that rivers did more than guide, they collected, mingled, preserved. Look upstream. The river narrows between stone outcrops, its current stronger, frothing white where rocks protrude. There the herd hesitates. One sauropod steps in water, rushing against its legs, and the others follow their bodies, forming a line across the current. Smaller grazers wait until the giants create a living dam, then cross within their shelter. It is instinct cooperation without words. Researchers still debate whether such behavior was deliberate or incidental. Did herds consciously use larger animals as protection? Or did the flow of instinct simply create safety? The fossils cannot say. But tonight you see the effect: unity shaped by circumstance, a crossing made gentle by presence. Downstream, the river bends into quiet pools. Here, life gathers more densely. Horsetails rise shoulder high, their hollow stalks swaying in the current. Ferns creep to the edges, their fronds dipping into water. And on the banks, nests appear, mounds of sand and vegetation, some freshly dug, others long abandoned. Fossil evidence in Montana preserves such nesting grounds where generations of hadrosaurs returned again and again, laying eggs in shallow scrapes close to rivers. You imagine the cycle. Eggs hatch, young stumble to the water's edge, drinking for the first time, learning to graze among reeds. Floods come washing some nests away, yet the herds return in future seasons, drawn by memory deeper than thought. The river hums with sound. Not the roar of a predator, not the clash of teeth, but the chorus of life in abundance. The chewing of many mouths, the splashing of tails, the low calls of hadrosaurs echoing across bends, their voices carrying through mist. And beneath it all, the steady rush of water, constant, eternal. Close your eyes and the sounds blend. It is like listening to rainfall, to ocean tides, to your own blood moving through your veins. The river's rhythm and the herd's rhythm become one. A lesser-known discovery from Spain revealed fossilized fish within the same layers as herbivorous dinosaur tracks. It is a reminder that these rivers fed not only giants, but entire ecosystems. Grazers stirred the water, plants fell into the current, nutrients spread, and life multiplied. The river was not only a path, but a pulse. Researchers still question how far these rivers reached, how they linked across drifting continents. The Cretaceous world was one of shifting land masses, inland seas, cutting across North America, rivers, feeding them valleys, connecting oceans. It is possible that herds followed these waterways for hundreds of miles, their lives tied not to borders, but to flow. Evening gathers again. The sky reflects pink and gold. Upon the river's surface, ripples bending light into shimmering patterns. The herd lingers at the banks, some lying down, their vast bodies, half-submerged tails floating like logs. They rest, chewing still but slower now as the day fades. You remain among them, your feet in the shallows, the current cool against your skin. The sound of water soothes you, steady and soft. The river carries not only the herd's reflection, but your own, blending them into one current of deep time. This is how life moved then, not by roads or maps, but by rivers. Highways of water, pathways of survival routes, written into instinct and preserved in stone. And as night falls, the herd sleeps by the banks. The river murmurs on, and you drift with it, carried gently downstream. The river fades from your sight, its silver bends dissolving into haze. When the air clears again, you find yourself in another season, one far less generous. The ground beneath your feet is cracked, fissured like the surface of old pottery. The ferns are brittle, their fronds curled and brown spores long since shed. Horsetails droop in shallow hollows, their stalks yellowed. Even the great conifers above look weary, resin dripping slowly from wounds in their bark. The air is thick with dust lifted by every step. And through this thirsty land the herd moves on. The rhythm of chewing continues. But it is different now, harder, slower, as mouths work through dry stalks and bark instead of lush greenery. Sauropods sweep their necks low, stripping what little remains among the withered ferns. Hadrosaurs bend their bills to gnaw at roots exposed by shrinking streams. Ankylosaurs tug at dry cycads, their teeth crunching with effort. Researchers still question how these grazers endured long droughts. Did they migrate vast distances, following memory to valleys still green? Or did they adapt their diets, turning to bark seeds and hardy shrubs? Fossilized dung coprolites sometimes preserves fragments of woody tissue, evidence that when grass and ferns failed, even bark became food. The land itself records the season. Sedimentary layers reveal cycles of flood and drought, alternating bands of mudstone and sandstone marking times of plenty and scarcity. Whole herds are sometimes found preserved in these layers, their bones mingled, suggesting that drought gathered them at dwindling waterholes where many perished together. Step among them now. You hear their breaths heavier than before, each exhale carrying dust into the shimmering air. The ground trembles beneath their steps, but more faintly, as though even their weight is dulled by hunger. A juvenile stumbles its legs, shaky, its call thin. Immediately the herd slows steps, aligning to match its faltering pace. Even in drought, the instinct to stay together remains. A lesser-known discovery in Argentina uncovered juvenile sauropods. Preserved beside adults, their bones showing signs of stress lines within the bone rings, pauses in growth. These marks are seasonal scars, evidence of lean times endured, written into their very skeletons. The air tastes of dryness. Your tongue feels parched, just breathing it in. Yet life persists. Lizards dart across cracked mud, feeding on insects that still hum in the heat. Primitive mammals hide in burrows, emerging at dusk to gnaw seeds spared by the herd. Above pterosaurs wheel in silence, their shadows drifting across the scorched earth. But it is the herd you return to. Watch how they move slower, yes, but steady. They do not scatter in panic. They do not abandon their young. They march one step after another toward a horizon where they trust water still lingers. Researchers still debate whether such migrations were instinctive or learned. Did each generation follow ancient paths, or did they rediscover them anew? When drought returned, fossil trackways across multiple layers suggest that the same routes were walked again and again. Memory carried not in minds, but in herds themselves. The sun lowers red and swollen through dust. Shadows lengthen, stretching across cracked plains. The herd gathers around what remains of a stream, a thin trickle no wider than a branch. Sauropods lower their muzzles, sucking at mud for moisture. Hadrosaurs kneel at the edge, their bills scooping shallow pools. Ankylosaurs shuffle into the shade of trees, tongues flicking across bark for droplets of resin. You kneel too, cupping your hands in the mud, feeling the faint coolness seep into your palms. It is not much, but it is enough. A lesser-known fossil site in Madagascar shows evidence of drought's hand. Layers of bones from fish to turtles to dinosaurs clustered in ancient depressions. Remnants of waterholes that became traps when the rains failed. Entire ecosystems gathered at shrinking pools, drawn together by thirst, preserved together in death. Here, though, the herd survives. They rest through the hottest hours, chewing what little they can find. Tails swinging slowly against flies, the valley hums with the quiet rasp of mouths, working even in scarcity. Night falls, and the air cools. The stars brighten above, unclouded by moisture. The herd stirs, renewed by darkness. Their steps resume, carrying them onward, across dust plains guided by instinct, by memory, by survival. You walk with them, the ground rough beneath your feet, the air still heavy, but softer now. In the silence, you notice the rhythm again. Not the abundance of lush ferns, not the chorus of hadrosaur songs, but the quieter rhythm of endurance. Chewing persists, footsteps persist, life persists. Researchers still question whether drought shaped the evolution of these grazers, favoring those who could endure longer, walk farther. Extract more from less. The fossil record suggests resilient survival across cycles of climate that lasted millions of years. The drought was not anomaly, but pattern. Look back once more at the herd. Their silhouettes blur against the dusty horizon, tails, trailing necks, swaying mouths, still chewing. They do not hurry. They do not despair. They move forward step by step, bite by bite, carrying the memory of green valleys within them. This is the lesson of the drought, that survival is not always abundance. Sometimes it is simply persistence. Through scarcity, trust in paths worn by countless generations. Faith that beyond the dust ferns will rise again. The drought landscape softens as the herd presses on. Dust fades, the air cools, and you find yourself walking with them in a plain touched by the silver light of early dawn. The ferns here have begun to green again, small shoots unfurling tender fronds rising from cracks in the soil. Relief spreads through the herd, not in cries or exclamations, but in subtler ways. Watch closely. There are signals here flowing between the animals, a language without words. A tail lifts and the herd slows. Another tail sways to the left, and those behind adjust their course. A neck arches suddenly, plates catching the light, and the nearest bodies pause, sensing vigilance. These are not random gestures. They are messages carried across distance, understood without sound. Fossil trackways sometimes reveal this hidden language. Lines of prints show herds turning together, pausing together, shifting direction as though guided by cues invisible to us. There are no roars preserved in stone, no cries etched into rock. But the alignment of steps tells us that movement was shared responses, coordinated. Researchers still question the means. Did vibrations travel through the ground, felt by sensitive feet? Did tails crack like whips, their sound carrying far? Or was it simply posture, a shift in weight, a gesture repeated so many times that instinct recognized it immediately, whatever the method it worked? The herd moved as one, guided not by speech, but by rhythm. Stand among them now and feel it. A sauropod swings its tail low, brushing ferns. Instantly, smaller ornithopods nearby sidestep, giving it room. An ankylosaur pauses, its clubbed tail raised slightly, and those behind halt, sensing caution. A hadrosaur flicks its tail in short, sharp arcs, and another answers their signals, crossing invisibly through the morning air. The silence is not emptiness, it is communication. A lesser-known discovery in Wyoming revealed sauropod tail vertebrae with extreme flexibility, suggesting they could crack their tails like whips at supersonic speeds. Was this a weapon, a deterrent, or a signal? Imagine that sound echoing across valleys, a single crack sharp as thunder, carrying a message of warning to herds half a mile away. Researchers still debate whether such tail whips were practical. No direct evidence of injuries from them exists. Yet the anatomy is suggestive, and the idea lingers that the herd carried not only mouths for grazing, but instruments for language woven into their very spines. The communication extends beyond tails. Watch the heads now. A hadrosaur lifts its bill and lets out a low hum answered by another farther off. Their crests may amplify sound, but their posture speaks to the angle of the head, the direction of the gaze cues understood by others in the group. A stegosaur pauses mid-chew plates, flaring, as blood fills their vessels, glowing faintly red. Another responds by lowering its own plate's tension, diffusing. No roar, no clash, just posture, just color. A lesser-known fossil from China preserved skin impressions of an ankylosaur, with subtle ridges and patterns. Perhaps even skin itself carried signal stripes or shades seen by herdmates, a quiet code of recognition. You walk through the herd and sense it flowing around you. There are no collisions, no confusion. Though bodies press close, tails, swing necks sway. Each animal reads the other, adjusting instinctively. It is like moving water, each droplet shaping the next language, unspoken yet perfectly understood. The herd's survival depends on this. In times of danger, signals ripple outward instantly. A tail stiffens, a head lifts, and within seconds, the entire group slows or shifts direction. There is no need for debate. Instinct and signal merge, carrying decisions across hundreds of bodies without a word. Researchers still question whether this amounts to true communication, or whether it is simply reflex, a cascade of reactions. Yet watching them now, you cannot help but feel that it is both, that in their silence lies a kind of language deeper than ours, more ancient, woven not in sounds but in movements repeated for millions of years. The morning light strengthens mist lifting from the plain. The herd spreads outward, fanning across fresh ferns. And yet, though they scatter, they do not lose one another. Tails sway, heads lift bodies, paws messages continuing invisibly across the distance. A juvenile strays too far, and with a flick of its mother's tail, it hurries back, guided by a signal it knows instinctively. Imagine this code filling entire valleys. No noise, no clamor, only movements, gestures, glances. To us, silence. To them, conversation. A lesser-known site in South Korea preserves not only dinosaur footprints, but tail drag marks weaving through trackways. Some drag shallow and short, others deep and long. Were these accidents of fatigue, or were they signals scratched across the ground? We cannot know, but the possibility remains that even the earth itself carried their language, temporary scripts written in dust and mud. Stand still now and feel the herd communicating around you. A sauropod shifts and others shift with it. A hadrosaur hums low and the tone passes on. An ankylosaur raises its tail and movement slows. You are surrounded by messages you cannot decode, but you sense them nonetheless, like currents in the air. And in this you realize something: language need not be words. It need not be sounds. It can be rhythm, posture, silence itself. The herd has always known this. As evening approaches, the plain glows gold once more. The herd gathers to rest their tails, falling still, their heads lowering. Communication softens into calm. The silent language fades into the background, replaced again by chewing, by breathing, by the eternal rhythm of life. You lie among them. The ground warm, the sky wide, the herd's silence enfolding you like a lullaby. Here, even without words, you understand. The plain fades, and with it the herd's shifting signals. Slowly, the ground beneath you hardens, the soft dust replaced by stone. At first, you think you are walking across a dry riverbed. But as you look closer, you see shapes in the rock patterns, delicate and unmistakable. Leaves. Everywhere you step, the ground is filled with impressions of plants. Fern fronds etched in perfect symmetry. Cycad leaves pressed flat, their veins splayed like the ribs of a fan. Branches of conifers preserved with cones still attached, every scale visible. It is as though a garden has been caught mid-breath and turned to stone. This is the fossil garden. Imagine the process. A storm tears through a valley, sweeping plants into a flood. They sink buried beneath layers of silt. Pressed by time, they harden their forms, preserved in stone, while the living world moves on. Millions of years later, you stand above them, tracing their outlines with your hand, seeing not only plants, but meals. For these are the vanished menus of the grazers. Each fern frond here was once stripped by jaws. Each cycad cone cracked beneath teeth. Each conifer branch torn down by a sweeping neck. The fossil garden is both archive and kitchen, holding the recipes of an age. Fossilized plant beds appear all over the world. In Argentina, petrified forests stretch for miles. Trunks still standing upright, their wood turned to quartz. In North America, Jurassic floodplains hold mats of horsetails, stems clustered exactly as they grew. In Mongolia, whole fields of ferns remain imprinted in sandstone, delicate as lace. Researchers still question how complete these menus are. Did grazers eat everything available, or did they choose favoring some plants over others? Coprolites' fossilized dung sometimes provide answers. Inside them, paleobotanists find fragments of specific leaves, pollen grains, even spores. A hadrosaur meal frozen in time might show horsetail stems, conifer needles and ferns together, while a sauropod's dung might contain little but stripped pine. The fossils suggest both variety and preference, though no single rule applies. Kneel now among the stone leaves. Run your fingers along the ridges, still sharp, though millions of years old. Imagine the moment they were alive, shimmering in wind green and supple, before jaws tore them free. The fossil garden whispers of abundance of cycles, repeated endlessly of lives, built on eating and being eaten. A lesser-known discovery in India revealed petrified wood with bite marks, grooves, etched by the jaws of ancient grazers. To see them today is to see not only the plant, but the very act of feeding preserved as a scar. Look further, and you find seeds. Fossil cones cracked their scales, forced apart. Fossil ginkgo leaves pressed flat, their fan shapes unmistakable. Fossil pollen grains trapped in amber, still golden under magnification. These are details so small, so ordinary that it seems miraculous they survived. Yet here they are, laid out before you, like the remnants of a meal long finished. Researchers still debate how flowering plants, which arrived late in the age of dinosaurs, reshaped the menu. Did herds shift rapidly to the new blooms and fruits? Or did they linger with conifers and ferns? Fossil evidence suggests both a mingling of old and new plants and grazers locked in quiet negotiation. As you wander deeper into the fossil garden, you begin to see patterns. Some layers are dense with cycads, others with horsetails, others with towering conifer branches. It is as though each stratum is a season, frozen, wet times of abundance, dry times of scarcity, growth and decay, repeating forever. The garden is silent, yet not empty. It hums with memory. Every impression is a story of what once fed giants, what once passed through grinding teeth, what once nourished life that shook the ground as it walked. Close your eyes and imagine the herd among these plants when they were green. Sauropods, sweeping necks side to side, tearing branches. Hadrosaurs lowering their bills into reeds, stripping stems. Ankylosaurs grinding cycads, tails swinging lazily. Stegosaurs clipping ferns like gardeners with shears. Each plant before you once had its eater, each leaf its destiny. A lesser-known fossil from Utah preserved a cluster of cycads with seeds intact, suggesting they were buried before any grazer could reach them. They are a rare exception, a meal uneaten, saved for stone. All the rest were consumed, their memory carried not in themselves, but in the bones of those who fed upon them. The air grows cooler as night falls. The fossil garden glows faintly in moonlight, every impression catching shadow, every leaf sharp against stone. It is beautiful in a quiet, sorrowful way. These plants no longer sway, no longer grow, yet they remain as if to remind you that life leaves its mark not only in bones, but in what was eaten. Researchers still question how much of the fossil garden remains undiscovered. For every site revealed, thousands may lie hidden beneath soil and sea, their leaves still waiting their meals, still recorded. The earth holds its menu close, releasing it only rarely, like secrets whispered to those patient enough to listen. You lie down among the stone leaves, the ground cool beneath your back. Above the stars shimmer. Around you the fossil garden stretches silent and eternal. And yet, in your imagination, the plants are alive again. Green and lush, feeding herds that move endlessly, chewing softly, reshaping the land with each bite. The fossil garden is both past and present. It is stone, but also memory. It is silence, but also rhythm. And within it, you find yourself listening, not to voices, but to meals turned into echoes. The fossil garden fades behind you, the stone leaves dissolving into mist. When it clears again, you find yourself standing beside the herd once more. Their mouths are busy as always, stripping ferns, chewing reeds, tearing conifer branches. But tonight, your thoughts turn inward, not to what they eat, but to what happens after. How does a body, the length of a train, the weight of a dozen elephants, take in mouthfuls of fibrous plants and turn them into life? How does the rhythm of chewing become the rhythm of heartbeats, steps, survival? This is the mystery of the stomachs of giants. Sauropods had simple peg-like teeth. They did not grind plants the way hadrosaurs did. Instead, they swallowed them in vast mouthfuls, leaving digestion to occur deeper within. Paleontologists believe their stomachs were immense fermentation vats filled with microbial life, breaking down cellulose, releasing energy slowly over hours, even days. Researchers still question the mechanics. Did sauropods carry stones gastroliths in their bellies to help grind food? Some fossils show smooth, rounded stones among their ribs, possible evidence of such stomach aids. But debate continues, were these truly swallowed for digestion, or simply stones gathered by accident in rivers? The answers remain uncertain, the stomach debate ongoing. Hadrosaurs, by contrast, carried entire batteries of teeth, hundreds at a time, constantly replaced. Their mouths ground food efficiently before it reached the gut. Fossilized jaw bones show ridges worn by constant chewing grooves, deepened by endless motion. Theirs was a different strategy: grind, early, digest later. Stegosaurs, meanwhile, had small leaf-shaped teeth, simple and blunt. They clipped plants like scissors, but did little grinding. Their stomachs must have borne the brunt of digestion, fermenting low plants in silence. Ankylosaurs, too, had small ridged teeth, suggesting a similar path, less chewing, more gut work. The diversity of strategies reveals a truth. There was no single solution to being a giant plant eater. Each lineage carried its own compromise between mouth and stomach, between chewing and fermenting, between efficiency and endurance. Imagine standing beside a resting sauropod. Its flanks rise and fall slowly, but you sense more than breath. You imagine the great churn within gases, bubbling microbes, swarming leaves dissolving into energy. A living furnace, its heat warming the night. You feel the ground tremble faintly and wonder if those vibrations are digestion itself, the silent work of a gut as vast as a chamber. A lesser-known fossil from Utah preserved an ankylosaur with its last meal intact, ferns, seeds, even charcoal from a forest fire, all locked within its stomach. The detail revealed not only diet, but method plants partially broken down, suggesting slower fermentation. From this, paleontologists infer that digestion varied widely among grazers, some rapid, some patient. Researchers still question how long digestion took. Did sauropods ferment food for days at a time, carrying entire harvests within them? Or did their guts move faster, fueled by sheer quantity? Models exist for both, yet fossils offer only fragments. It is as though the answers are written on invisible parchment carried in organs that vanished millions of years ago. And so the stomach debate continues not only in science, but here in imagination. Close your eyes and listen, not to chewing now, but to the silence after. The chewing pauses, the mouthful swallowed, and within the body the rhythm continues unseen. You can almost hear it, a faint gurgle, a bubbling churn, a slow transformation. A soundless alchemy turning green into muscle, into movement, into shadow. This is the hidden rhythm of grazers, as constant as their chewing, but less visible. The rhythm of stomachs. The debate extends further. Some paleontologists propose that sauropods carried symbiotic microbes more advanced than anything alive today, partnerships honed to break down plants efficiently. Others suggest that their bodies simply tolerated inefficiency, surviving by eating constantly, quantity overwhelming limits. Fossil evidence remains silent, but the size of their success, millions of years, continents filled with herds, suggests their methods worked. A lesser-known fact, methane. If sauropod guts fermented as modern cows do, they may have released vast amounts of gas into the air, influencing climate itself. Some researchers have suggested cautiously that sauropod digestion could have warmed the Jurassic world by releasing greenhouse gases. It is speculation debated uncertain, but it reminds us that even stomachs can shape climate. Walk among them now. The herd grazes quietly, each body a moving chamber of digestion. You realize that the world you stand in, the soil, the plants, even the air, was shaped by these stomachs as much as by their teeth. Leaves broken down became dung. That fertilized soil seeds carried within bellies germinated far away. Gases released shifted skies. Their guts were not private but planetary. Researchers still question whether these processes limited their size or enabled it. Was gigantism a triumph of digestive innovation or of sheer patience? No final answer emerges, only the soft rhythm of speculation. Night deepens. The herd lies down, chewing slowed some at rest. Yet even in sleep, their stomachs work. Silent furnaces glowing invisibly within, turning meals into energy-feeding dreams of motion and survival. You lie with them, imagining your own body as smaller echo. You too digest, you too carry microbes, you too live by breaking down what you eat. And in this, the distance between you and the giants shrinks. You are kin, not by bone, but by stomach. The stomach debate will never fully resolve. The organs are gone, the evidence partial, the models incomplete. Yet the truth is inescapable, whatever their method, it worked. For tens of millions of years, herds filled valleys, forests, plains. Their stomachs sustained the rhythm of chewing, the rhythm of steps, the rhythm of life itself. And so as you drift into rest among them, you listen not only to mouths, but to bellies, to the silent churn within, and you realize the soft rhythms of prehistoric grazers were always doubled above and chewing below in digestion. The night settles gently now. The air cools heavy with moisture, and the valley softens into quiet. You find yourself in a swamp, the kind that breathes mist even under starlight. Pools of water lie still, their surfaces mirroring fragments of moon and tree. Reeds sway, insects drone, and from the darkness the herd emerges once more. It is midnight, and still they move. The giants are calmer here, slower even than before. Sauropods wade chest deep into the pools, their tails drifting like fallen logs, their necks swaying in long arcs as they strip leaves from cypress branches. Hadrosaurs move in groups along the margins, their bills dipping into lily pads, chewing softly, water dripping from their muzzles. Ankylosaurs shuffle on drier ground, their heavy armor glinting faintly in moonlight, tails swaying lazily. The swamp hums around them. Frogs call in hollow tones, primitive insects buzz, wings trembling. Fish ripple just beneath the surface, disturbed by the press of feet and the lowering of jaws. Pterosaurs circle overhead, their wings catching moonlight, their shadows sliding across the still water. The herd does not pause. Even at midnight, the rhythm of chewing persists. Fossil evidence tells us that many grazing dinosaurs lived near wetlands. Their bones are often found in ancient river deltas, floodplains, and swamps. These places were rich with ferns, horsetails, and aquatic plants, easy food for mouths built to gather and grind. Whole bone beds of hadrosaurs have been uncovered in such deposits, suggesting they returned season after season, bound to water by instinct as much as by hunger. Researchers still question how much of their lives unfolded in such places. Were swamps resting grounds visited briefly, or were they permanent homes, shaping every rhythm of existence? The answer remains unclear, but the fossils suggest continuity. Water and grazers bound together across epochs. Walk quietly among them. The ground is soft beneath your feet, damp with moss and water. Every step releases the scent of mud, sharp and earthen. Mist curls low, brushing your knees, rising like breath from the swamp itself. Above, stars glimmer faintly blurred by haze. You stop at the edge of a pool. A hadrosaur lowers its head beside you, scooping lilies into its bill. The sound is delicate lips closing on stems, water dripping in thin streams. It hums faintly as it chews a low vibration that seems to blend with the chorus of frogs. Another answers from across the pool, their tones overlapping, creating a harmony as ancient as it is soft. A lesser-known fossil from Utah preserved a cluster of water plants within the gut of a hadrosaur, proof that these animals fed heavily in aquatic environments. Their bills were well suited for stripping reeds, their grinding teeth perfect for pulping stems. To imagine them now is to see the swamp as more than backdrop. It was pantry table sanctuary. Researchers still debate how well adapted their limbs were for water. Some argue that hadrosaurs were semi-aquatic, wading and swimming as easily as walking. Others claim they were fully terrestrial, entering swamps only to feed. Tonight you see them wading without effort, bodies buoyed by water movements, smooth content. The swamp itself is alive. Fireflies or their prehistoric kin glow faintly in reeds. Primitive crocodilians slide into pools, their eyes gleaming briefly before vanishing. Turtles bask on fallen logs, their shells shining wet. Each creature plays its role, bound to the swamp's rhythm, and the herd weaves through it all. Their shadows pass like drifting clouds, slow and immense, unhurried. They do not fear the crocodilians. They do not notice the insects. They move with the certainty of those who belong. Close your eyes now and listen. The swamp is not silent. It hums with layers of sound, frogs calling in deep rhythm, insects buzzing in thin crescendos, fish breaking the surface with gentle plops, and beneath it all, the steady chewing of giants. It is a nocturne, a music of water and life, as calming as any lullaby. A lesser-known fossil site in Mongolia shows dinosaur footprints pressed deep into ancient mud, their outlines filled with ripples where water once pooled. These impressions capture midnight moments like this, preserved not in bone, but in earth. Steps taken by moonlight remembered in stone. Researchers still question whether dinosaurs slept standing like elephants or lying down. Fossils of juveniles curled into resting positions suggest the latter. Yet here in this swamp, many remain upright, chewing still as if the rhythm of eating cannot be set aside, even for sleep. A few lie down on mossy ground, tails curled, their flanks rising and falling with breath. The herd shifts around them, guarding silently. You realize then that even rest is communal. Sleep is not isolation, but presence within the herd's watchful calm. The night deepens further. The stars wheel overhead, reflected in black pools. The mist thickens, wrapping trees and bodies alike in silver gauze. And still the herd grazes, their silhouettes swaying, their chewing endless. Midnight belongs to them. The swamp belongs to them. And for this moment you belong too. The swamp mist lingers as night dissolves, but when morning arrives, the air carries a different weight. It is not the cool humidity of water or the fragrant resin of conifers. It is sharper, heavier, tinged with dust that settles on your tongue. You look to the horizon and see the reason, a mountain, tall and dark, its peak crowned with a rising column of smoke. Volcanoes, they punctuate the Mesozoic landscape, reshaping valleys, burying forests, and scattering ash across continents. And now, as you walk with the herd, you see ash drifting down in soft gray flakes, settling on leaves, clinging to backs, covering the ground like pale snow. The herd does not panic. They move steadily, as they always do, chewing as they go. A sauropod lowers its neck to a conifer branch dusted with ash, stripping it clean, indifferent to the grit. A hadrosaur dips its bill into a reed bed, the stems gray but still edible. Ankylosaurs grind at cycads, their armor muted by the fine powder. Fossil beds preserve these moments. Whole layers of volcanic ash contain plants and animals entombed in place, their last meal still within them. In China, the Johol biota preserves exquisite details of ferns and fish, and feathered dinosaurs captured by sudden eruptions. In Argentina, petrified forests lie frozen beneath ash blankets, every trunk and branch preserved in quartz. Researchers still question how frequent eruptions shaped ecosystems. Did they devastate herds repeatedly, or did life rebound swiftly in ash-rich soil? The evidence suggests both sudden loss followed by renewal, as ash acted like fertilizer, spurring new growth in seasons that followed. The air grows dim as the ash thickens, muting sunlight into a hazy orange. The herd silhouettes blur their outlines, softened by drifting dust. Yet they continue, mouths grinding, steps pressing onward. The rhythm is not broken. A lesser-known discovery in India revealed coprolites, fossilized dung containing volcanic minerals, proof that grazers ingested ash-coated plants. The stomachs of giants churned even grit into survival. Imagine their guts working harder, slower, but still transforming leaves into life amid clouds of smoke. You step beside a hadrosaur as it lowers its head. Ash clings to its crest, streaking the hollow tubes that once sang across wetlands. It exhales, blowing gray dust into the air, then hums low, a sound muffled by haze. Another answers their tones, blending into the ash-heavy silence. Even here their songs persist. The ground beneath you is warm, as if the earth itself is breathing heat. Every so often, a distant rumble shakes the valley ash clouds, billowing higher. Pterosaurs vanish into the haze, their wings beating faintly, their cries muffled. Yet the herd grazes on, patient, enduring. Researchers still debate whether volcanic winters, periods of global cooling triggered by ash, caused temporary declines in dinosaur populations. Some evidence shows growth rings in bones slowing dramatically, as if herds starved or endured harsher seasons. Others argue that many species adapted their migrations, carrying them beyond ash zones. The truth lies scattered in stone fragments of survival amid catastrophe. You kneel to the ground and lift a handful of ash. It is fine, soft, weightless between your fingers. It drifts apart in the breeze, settling again upon ferns. This is the texture of endings and beginnings, both burial and renewal. For in time, this ash will enrich soil and green will return more lush than before. The herd seems to know this. Their patience is trust in cycles deeper than memory. A lesser-known site in Patagonia preserves a forest petrified by ash. Its trees' upright roots, intact, leaves frozen in mid-growth. Standing among them today is like stepping into a stone photograph, a garden caught between death and rebirth. The ash falls heavier now, yet the herd presses forward. Their flanks are gray. Their scales muted their steps, leaving pale impressions. Still they chew, still they breathe, still they move. You walk among them, your own hair and skin dusted, and feel a quiet kinship. For in this dim light you realize resilience is not loud. It is not dramatic. It is the simple act of chewing still, of stepping forward through haze, of waiting for green to return. Night falls again. The sky glows faintly with volcanic fire, red and flickering. The herd rests in its shadow, their bodies faint against the ash-covered ground. The air is heavy, but calm. You lie among them, listening to their steady breaths, their chewing slowed, but not silenced. Ash drifts down upon you, too soft as snow. It covers the earth, the herd, the plants, the pools. Yet beneath it all, life continues patient and enduring. Researchers still question how many such nights the herds endured, how many times ash veiled their world, perhaps countless times across millions of years. Yet always plants sprouted again, seeds broke soil, and herds returned. Volcanic fire was not the end, only a pause in rhythm. And so, as you drift into sleep beneath the falling ash, you understand the soft rhythms of prehistoric grazers were never silenced. Not by drought, not by dust, not even by fire from the mountains. They continued always through ash and into green. The ash fades slowly. Winds carry it away. The air clears and sunlight spills once more upon the land. But something is different now. The air holds a fragrance it did not. Before a sweetness faint yet unmistakable. The valley you enter is green again, but the green is dotted with color. Flowers, they are small, at first tucked among ferns and horsetails, delicate bursts of white and yellow. Some cling low to the ground, others cluster on shrubs. Compared to the towering conifers and cycads, they seem insignificant. And yet they are the heralds of a profound change. The arrival of angiosperms, flowering plants, latecomers in the age of dinosaurs. Walk slowly through the valley and notice them. Petals catch sunlight offering nectar. Seeds form within protective casings, carried by wind, by water, by animals. Their variety is astonishing, even at the beginning shapes and colors designed not merely to exist, but to attract. The herd takes notice too. A hadrosaur bends its bill to a cluster of blooms, nipping carefully at the leaves beneath swallowing flowers, along with stems. A juvenile investigates, chewing a mouthful of petals, pollen dusting its muzzle. Sauropods, though, still stripping branches high above, pause to gather flowering twigs, their simple teeth crushing seeds with ease. Fossil evidence reveals this shift. Coprolites from the late Cretaceous preserve angiosperm fragments, pollen grains, seed coats, even pieces of fruit. Grazers were among the first to spread these new plants, their stomachs carrying seeds across distances, depositing them in fertile soil. Researchers still question how rapidly flowers spread. Did they overtake ferns and cycads, swiftly transforming landscapes in a few million years? Or did they grow slowly at first, a subtle presence beneath ancient giants? The fossil record is patchy, tantalizing, suggesting bursts of radiation followed by lulls. The debate remains like petals scattered on the wind. Kneel beside a cluster of early magnolias. Their petals are thick, waxy, sturdy against insects. Bees, newcomers themselves in this age, move clumsily among them, gathering nectar. With each landing, pollen dusts, their bodies carried to the next bloom. You realize that the world has shifted. Reproduction now involves not only wind and water, but cooperation with animals. A lesser-known fossil in New Jersey preserves flowers alongside insect impressions, evidence of this new alliance. Plants and pollinators rising together, reshaping ecosystems, weaving a more intricate web than before. And the grazers stand in the center of it all. Watch the herd move through this flowering valley. Every step shakes petals loose, every bite spreads seeds. Ankylosaurs graze at shrubs heavy with berries, their grinding teeth crushing pulp, their droppings carrying seeds intact. Hadrosaurs wade into thickets, stripping both leaves and blossoms. Sauropods snap branches heavy with flowers, scattering pollen like dust. Without meaning to, they become gardeners of the future, shaping the spread of blooms across continents. Researchers still question how much of this was deliberate choice. Did grazers prefer flowers for their sweetness, or did they eat indiscriminately? Blooms caught up with leaves, evidence of selective feeding exists. Coprolites richer in angiosperms than in ferns, suggesting preference. But the full answer remains hidden. The air is different here. It hums not only with insects, but with fragrance. Sweetness mingles with the musky scent of ferns, resin of conifers, and damp earth. You breathe deeply, and the change is unmistakable. It is as though the earth itself has discovered perfume. Close your eyes, and the scents carry you into memory. The first time flowers ever opened. The first time their colors lit the undergrowth. The first time grazers carried their seeds beyond valleys. It is the beginning of a partnership that will outlast the dinosaurs themselves, continuing into your own world of gardens and fields. A lesser-known fossil discovery in Wyoming preserved a cluster of flowering plants beside the remains of small ornithopods. Were they feeding when floodwaters came? Did they help spread the very plants that sealed them in stone? The fossils do not tell. But the juxtaposition lingers, a frozen moment of change. Researchers still debate what drove the rise of flowers. Was it insect pollination, grazers spreading seeds, climate shifts, or all at once? Perhaps the answer is not a single cause, but a chorus. Many forces weaving together to open petals on a once ferned earth. You walk deeper into the valley. The herd moves slowly, chewing steadily, their bodies dusted with pollen, their mouths stained with berries. Birds, feathered descendants of smaller dinosaurs, flit among branches, carrying seeds in their beaks. The ecosystem has grown more intricate, more interdependent. What began as simple chewing of ferns has become the spreading of colors and scents across worlds. The sun sets low, turning flowers golden, their petals glowing like lanterns in the dim light. Grazers chew in rhythm, their shadows stretching across fields of blossoms. The air is filled with fragrance and quiet, the promise of change whispered in every breath. Lie down among the blooms. Petals brush your skin. Pollen drifts around you. The scent of sweetness and earth lulls you deeper. The herd passes nearby, their silhouettes framed by flowers, their chewing steady as ever. Yet you feel the shift, the world softening into new forms. Seeds waiting in soil cycles, reshaping themselves. This is the gift of the flowers, to endure not only in their own right, but through those who ate them, carried them, spread them. The seeds of change are here. They always were. The rhythms falter. The steady chewing, the rustle of leaves. The pollen drifting on the wind. These sounds that have carried us through millions of years, suddenly quiet. The valley that bloomed with flowers and herds now holds its breath. Far above, beyond clouds and atmosphere, a rock drifts through space. It is no ordinary stone. but a body 10 kilometers across, traveling faster than thought, heavier than imagination. It has wandered through the solar system for eons, cold and indifferent. And now, its path and Earth's have crossed. You feel it before it comes. The air seems denser, the sunlight sharper. Birds lift suddenly from the trees, their wings beating in panic. The grazers raise their heads from the flowers, ears twitching, muscles tense. Somewhere deep inside the earth itself shudders, as if bracing for what it knows is about to happen. Then light, not the light of dawn or fire, but a flash, so searing it erases shadow. For a heartbeat, the entire horizon is flame. Then comes the roar, louder than any storm, louder than volcanoes, a sound that presses against your chest and leaves you breathless. The asteroid has struck near the Yucatan Peninsula. In an instant, rock vaporizes oceans, surge forests ignite. Shockwaves race outward faster than herds can run. Fossil layers tell the story. A thin band of clay rich in iridium, rare on Earth, but common in asteroids, marks the boundary. Above it, life shifts. Below it, a world of dinosaurs, ferns, and flowers. Researchers still question the full sequence. Did firestorms spread across continents first, or did darkness fall immediately? Was it the blast, the tsunamis, the climate collapse, or all at once that ended the rhythms of the great grazers? The debate continues, but the outcome remains the same. Imagine standing in the aftermath. The sky darkens, filled with soot and ash, blotting out the sun. Days turn to twilight, twilight to night. The flowers wilt without light, their colors fading into gray. Ferns curl brown at the edges, conifers shed needles. The air grows cold unnaturally fast, a chill that seeps into every breath. The herds wander confused. Sauropods move slowly, their long necks searching barren branches. Hadrosaurs paw at the ground, finding little but ash. Ankylosaurs lumber swinging tails in vain at a threat they cannot strike. Their chewing slows, their rhythms weaken, and then silence. A lesser-known fossil site in North Dakota called Tanis preserves what may be the very day of impact. Fish entombed in river channels, gills filled with glassy spherules of molten rock. Branches broken, mud churned. It is as if a snapshot was taken in the chaos of the first hours. Yet even in that chaos, the grazers linger in the record. Scattered bones of ceratopsians, hadrosaurs, small herbivores, all lying within or just above the iridium-rich clay. They lived into the moment of catastrophe, their final breaths part of the ending chorus. You walk through a forest gone silent. No birdsong, no insect hum, only the crunch of ash beneath your steps. The sky glows faint red with embers, but no warmth reaches the ground. In the distance, a hadrosaur skeleton lies, half buried in soot, its crest tilted skyward as though still listening for rhythms that will never return. Researchers still debate how quickly extinction followed. Some say weeks, others years. Perhaps a few isolated populations survived longer, clinging to pockets of food. But the chain was broken. Flowers could not bloom without sunlight. Grazers could not eat without plants. Predators followed their prey into silence. The rhythm unraveled thread by thread until the great chorus of the Mesozoic dissolved into stillness. Close your eyes here. Imagine the sound of chewing fading, the rustle of ferns falling quiet. Imagine fields where herds once grazed, now empty, where footsteps no longer shake the ground. The earth breathes but softly, as though mourning. And yet beneath the ash seeds wait. Flower seeds, fern spores, conifer cones, all buried, all dormant, all biding their time. The silence is not absolute. It is a pause, a stillness, before another rhythm begins. The grazers are gone, but not forgotten. Every meadow you walk in today, every blossom you smell carries the echo of their chewing, their wandering, their spreading of seeds. Their silence after impact is part of your own garden's music, a pause between verses of life's unending song. For now you lie among the ashes. The world is hushed, the air cool, the sky dim. Somewhere deep in the soil, seeds stir. Somewhere in the shadows, mammals wait. But in this moment, the earth is still, and the soft rhythms of the grazers have faded into silence. The silence does not last forever. Out of soot and ruin, out of twilight skies and ash-filled winds, something stirs. Tiny mammals, once hidden in burrows and shadows, emerge cautiously. Ferns unfurl their fronds, pushing through the gray crust. Seeds that slept through the cold awaken. Slowly, quietly, the earth begins again. But even as life resumes, the rhythms of the great grazers remain. Not in bodies of flesh, not in the herds that once shook the plains, but in echoes, patterns woven deep into the soil, into the lineage of plants, into the memory of stone. You feel it when you walk in a meadow today. The sway of tall grasses in the wind, the flutter of petals, the hum of bees moving from bloom to bloom. These are faint descendants of the symphony once carried by dinosaurs, by hadrosaurs, crunching reeds by ceratopsians, tearing leaves by sauropods, stripping branches. The rhythm has shifted, but it has not vanished. It lingers hidden in the cadence of living things. Researchers still question how much of the world's modern flora owes its spread to the Mesozoic grazers. Were flowering plants propelled forward by their constant pruning? Did seed dispersal accelerate because herds carried pods across miles? The details may be uncertain, but the impression is clear. The grazers shaped the stage for what would follow. Imagine standing on the edge of a quiet lake at dawn. Mist rises. Dragonflies hover. In the stillness, you hear only the faint ripple of water against the shore. Yet in your mind, you can almost summon the sound of hadrosaurs wading, or the deep breath of a sauropod lowering its head to drink. The echoes live in the imagination, bridging the millions of years between then and now. And as you breathe slowly and evenly, you notice how your own rhythm, the inhale, the exhale, aligns with theirs. The grazers lived by rhythm: chew, swallow, step, breathe. You live by rhythm too: heartbeat, breath, thought, dream. The continuity is not broken. It simply flows on softer, subtler across time. Fossils remain as reminders: a footprint in hardened mud toes splayed wide. A jaw with worn teeth, each groove a record of chewing. A coprolite, humble though it may seem, filled with fragments of plants long extinct. These are not just relics of death. They are echoes of life, of motion, of rhythm. They remind us that these creatures lived fully day by day, season by season, in worlds as real and rich as ours. You lie back now in your own bed. But in the quiet hum of night, you can almost hear it. A chorus of steady grazing, the sigh of leaves, the low rumble of a herd shifting its weight. It is not gone. It is folded into the background of time, like a melody played once and never again, yet somehow still humming beneath the surface. Researchers still debate the pace of recovery after the asteroid's impact. Was the Earth green again within decades, or did it take millennia? The numbers shift, but the heart of the matter stays. Life endures. And when life endures, rhythm returns. Today, elephants walk with the same ponderous sway as sauropods once did. Bison graze in wide plains, like ancient ceratopsians. Antelope-bound deer browse, cattle chew. The roles remain filled by new actors, yet inspired by old scripts written in the bones of time. Close your eyes and let the picture fade. The flowers, the ferns, the grazing herds, the forests, the rivers, the oceans whispering against the shore. Let them dissolve into darkness. Let the echoes soften into memory. What remains is the rhythm itself, slow, steady, soothing. The rhythm of earth, breathing of creatures, chewing of seeds, sprouting of worlds changing. A rhythm you share tonight, lying still, listening, drifting. The grazers are gone, but their echoes stay a lullaby carried across 66 million years. So as you rest now, remember you are part of the same continuum. The breath in your chest is as old as the atmosphere they once drew into their lungs. The sleep you enter tonight is as ancient as the silence that followed their passing. The rhythms are with you, soft, eternal, gentle. And perhaps, just perhaps, if you listen closely enough, you can still hear them, the soft chewing in the fields, the low rumble of herds moving together, the hush of leaves torn from branches, the echoes of the gentle grazers. Sleep well.